because OTs by nature, we're pioneers. We're pioneers, right? OT always is there when there's this worldwide community need that needs to be met, right? World War One, OTs were on the scene. That's when we first came on the scene, right?
Yeah.
World War Two, OTs are on the scene. The polio epidemic, suddenly like kids are getting polio. They need OTs in school systems. OTs are on the scene, right?
Yep.
So every time there's a world, whatever, catastrophe, global war, just think about this for a second. We just came off of the pandemic,
Yeah. Yeah.
massive global pandemic. There's something called the Great Resignation. Everybody's leaving their jobs. Why? They're
Yes.
stressed. They're
Yes.
like, they don't want to do it anymore. Their values are shifting. They don't want to be in their crappy 9 to 5, 40, 50, 60-hour week jobs anymore. They're done.
We are over it. We are
We're
over
over it.
it. Yes.
Guess who is the most well equipped, well trained, well educated, and well positioned profession on the planet to handle that? Occupational therapy.
We are.
Like, this is our time. This is our time. So, yes,
Oh,
I get all excited and passionate about it
I'm,
because
I'm getting goosebumps. I love it. These are things I'm passionate about too. You're listening to the Brave OT podcast with me, Carlin Nink. This podcast is all about empowering occupational therapists to step up, level up, blaze some trails, and maybe engage in a little conscious rebellion in service of our profession, our clients, our work, our businesses, and living our mission wholeheartedly. We are all about keeping it real, doing hard things, unhustling, being curious, exploring, growing through our challenges, and finding joy, fulfillment, and vitality as we do so. Really, we're OTing ourselves and each other. I hope you love this episode. I think you're going to love this conversation. Jill Garaffa brings so much passion and enthusiasm to this conversation about the world of occupational therapists, coaching, and working in corporate environments. Jill's really passionate about OT not only being in the medical model, but also helping people in other settings go from functional to optimal. And I love how Jill talks about being brave and bringing OT into corporate settings. Jill is a licensed occupational therapist in New Jersey and an ICF credentialed personal certified coach. Let's get into it. Jill, welcome. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do and just introduce yourself?
sure. My name is Jill Garaffa. I am a New Jersey licensed occupational therapist, and I also have an ICF accredited certification in life coaching. I am at a what's called a PCC level, professional certified coach. And in the world of ICF, there's different levels of coaching, and I sort of have the middle level. So there's one more level to go for master certified, but I'm at the PCC level, and hopefully next year I'll have MCC. But I was a frontline therapist for many, many years of my career. And for the past bunch of years, I've lost count, I have been a full time coach. And primarily how I earn my living is I do coaching in a corporate environment. So I have different contracts with different corporations, and I do everything honestly remotely from home. I can do things locally, but I pretty much do everything via Zoom and over the phone. And I do remote coaching for any type of professional, really, not just executives, but any type of professional in any type of environment, whether it's a corporate environment or medical environment. So, yeah, that's what
Are the employers usually paying for your services then?
So, two different ways that I get clients. Privately, people can find me online and hire me privately.
Yeah.
But yes, I would say most of my income is from corporations. And then the way that looks is again, you go through an HR department and not always HR. I have to clarify that because people think, oh, it's always through, it's not always through HR. Sometimes there is a manager, like a VP or a supervisor or a manager, and they might have a big team under them, like 5, 10, 20 people. And there might be a handful of folks on their team that would benefit from coaching. And a lot of times in bigger corporations, each department has their own budget and they can take out of their own personal budget to pay for coaching versus going through the entire organization. So, for example, I work partly for BMW. Okay, that's one of my contracts.
Yep.
It's people that, oh, wow, BMW. Yes, it's cool, right? But it's not like I have a global contract with BMW and I'm working with 50,000 employees.
Right.
No, excuse me. It's not like that at all. It's like literally there's a couple of managers at BMW and they're struggling with some stuff and they like took it out of their own budget and that's how they pay for me to go in there. And then I have other, again, there's always like a work in progress with other contracts and that's literally what it looks like all the time. It's like, for example, there's a hospital in 20 minutes from where I live that I'm in negotiations right now of what it's going to look like. I'm going to go in, physically go in the building, and it's just the nursing, which is they're struggling with some stuff. And I had a meeting last week with the DON, and we're working it out, like what it's going to look like. But again, that's a hospital system that's probably got 20,000 employees,
Yeah.
maybe not 20,000, but a lot. And I'm only going in for one department of nursing because
Right.
that one department is really struggling with some stuff on a team level and also individually. There's a handful of individuals that are really just dealing with some stuff and they're going to bring me in for that. So again, that's what I call a corporate contract. It's like the
Yeah.
corporation's paying me and
Yeah.
then I work with the individuals, sometimes the team,
Yeah.
but usually just the individuals on that team.
That's awesome. And so how do they know how do you get into that? How do you get in and these have the right people know that you can do this?
Thank you for asking that question because a lot I've talked to so many people and they're like, "Oh my god, that's so amazing. How do you get in?" Right? So here's how I get in. I always ask the question, who first of all, like I'm very transparent about what I do, right?
Yeah.
For a living, right? I always say coaching is not what I do, it's who I am, right? And it's always like how I show up in the world, right? So I've got like folks that I know personally, just friends, colleagues, acquaintances, things like that and they know that I coach. And then I will often get approached by them because they know that I coach. And then we'll just have literally a very casual conversation. It might be at a barbecue, it might be at a family party or out somewhere at a restaurant. Like it could be a very just absolutely the opposite of any kind of a corporate setting. Just literally a conversation. And then that one conversation will often get an introduction to somebody else. And that gets an introduction to somebody else. So my inner circle, they all know that I coach. Sometimes they approach me. Sometimes I approach them and I say, "Hey, this is what I do. Is there anybody on your team? Is there anybody that you know about that could use some support?" And they always can think of a few people. And then that's how I get in. And the original way I got in was somebody had hired me privately. She happened to work for BMW. And she says, "Oh my gosh, this is so helpful. I have to introduce you to my manager." She introduced me to her manager, and that's how I got into BMW. And then somebody else worked for Verizon. I have somebody else that works for Prudential. Like I got somebody else that works for a hospital. So it's a very, it sounds very sexy and mysterious. Ooh, corporate coaching. Like, right? But it's really just human beings having conversations with other human beings. And there's a service that I provide, and somebody says, "Hey, that's really cool. I could use that service where I work. That's great that you know how to do that." Right. So that's
I
kinda how it starts. It's very small and organic, and
I
it's
love
nothing
it.
flashy, you know?
You people, you talk about stuff that you love doing.
Yes.
You ask the questions. I think that's a specific. Do you know anyone who could use this? And then you ask for that introduction because I think when we start to say at a party, "Hey, what do you do? What do you do?" "Oh, I'm an occupational therapist. I help people do things that matter to them." And in these corporate settings, people will be like, "Oh, so would you help me
Exactly.
with my keyboard?" Like, or they
Yeah.
might not even ask, they'd walk away. Whereas you're like, "We'll help people with these types of things." When we think about the conversations, the coaching conversations you're having, what types of things are you talking about? Demystify this for those of us who think, "Oh, wow, that's"
I will totally demystify. So one thing I wanted to say as a caveat before I answer that question, you had said, "Okay, you explain what you do, you're at the barbecue, you're having the conversation,"
Yeah.
right? I will never say, "Do you know anybody that could use this?" My
Okay.
first question is always, "Okay, given everything you just heard me say,
Yeah.
all the things that I had to do, all the skills that I can help in your department,
Yeah.
who can you think of that would benefit from that?"
Who can you think of? So
That's the
it's not a yes
question.
or no, it's a who.
I say, "Who do you know that would benefit from this?" And they immediately can come up with a half a dozen names
That
or at
is
least a few names.
yeah.
So your question was, what is it that we talk about? So again, so when folks and corporations hire me, initially hiring me because I have a coaching certification.
Yeah.
Okay. But I always say like occupational therapists with coaching certification are the unicorns of the coaching world because Anybody can get a certification in coaching.
Yeah.
It's an unregulated industry.
Yeah.
Anybody out there that has a desire can just hang a shingle, put a hat on, and call themselves a coach, right?
Without
And
certification, like you can call yourself.
right.
Yeah.
Correct. Without a certification,
Yeah.
anybody can, because it's an unregulated industry, right? You're not going to get arrested if you're out there calling yourself a coach
No.
and you don't have some ICF accredited. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I always encourage people, especially if they're clinicians, if they're OTs and they have a license, go it to your clients and your patients to have some training, right? You got it, even if it's a weekend course, or you should have some training. Like I always,
I
if
did a
you never
weekend course. I did.
course is fine, but like
Yeah.
something, right? Because it's no different than if you were going to be a hand therapist with zero training. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't say, hey, I'm a driving therapist with no training. So you want to have some training. And ideally, I encourage folks to get the certification, specifically if they're going into corporate.
Yeah.
And also if they're, at least in the United States, if they're planning on crossing state lines, because it really does give you a professional edge. And it also legally protects you, definitely in the United States, because we have licensure here. And it's not good to go cross state lines. And if you've never been trained, then sometimes people think they're doing OT, or they think they're doing coaching, but really they're doing OT. So it can get hairy.
It can
But
get hairy, and that's where you can definitely get into trouble. Like having some
yeah,
is important. But
yeah,
and this is one of those places that you and I tend to answer differently on same questions on Facebook groups,
yes,
stuff like that. And I think my bias is that I've been working in mental health my whole career in one capacity or another. And so I've got extra training in motivational interviewing, in CBT, in ACT, in behavior change, and things like that. And so I've been using coaching all along.
correct.
And so I've found that when I look at the types of things, look at curriculums, look at the types of things you're learning in coaching, oh, like I already know all that stuff. I
Mhm.
need a bunch more to learn things that I've already been practicing. And in my little weekend course, I was like, I didn't learn anything other than, okay, we can do some package pricing. That's cool. But it was only a weekend course. There are great coaching programs out there. And I think that it's good for people to get extra training. But I would say it would be weird to find an OT who's never used coaching in their everyday work. Like, I feel like we are
Oh, yeah. We
kind
are
of,
the original coaches.
we are.
We're the original life coaches,
Yeah.
for sure. And most coaches, I think, I'm sorry, most OTs use like what we call a coach approach
Yeah.
with specific populations because it's what works.
Yeah.
It is what works. So your original question was,
Yeah.
what is it that I like? What do I see when I'm in corporations? What am I actually working on? So many different things. Like a lot of times, and I think this might be where it's a little bit different because when you do get trained with the actual coaching certification, ICF, blah blah blah, you learn a set of different skills that I never learned as an OT.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I bring into these environments a lot of times.
Yeah.
So while yes, when you're looking at it through the OT, we see things that other people don't see. Like I can see all the underlying things, right? Like I can pick up nuances of ADHD.
Yeah.
I can pick up nuances of even high level autism things that like might show up in a corporate environment.
Yeah.
I can pick up on genuine anxiety, depression, like things like that. Mental health diagnosis, I can pick up on that.
Yeah.
But I'm brought in to support a person in their job. So it can look like honestly anything. It can look like a common situation is just genuine work stress. Okay, that's a very common one where there's no mental health diagnosis, there's nothing quote unquote wrong. They're
Yeah.
just really stressed out, overwhelmed. Very often there's like a situation where the person they can't get their work done in a certain amount of time. So then they're taking the work home with them. And then they're not able to spend time with their family because they're home doing work for their jobs. Then there's all this emotional stuff, guilt, whatever. They're not spending enough time with their kids. They're living on the run. Again, what we would call quote unquote work-life balance, which you and I both know doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
There's different flows. Sometimes it's around assertiveness. Like sometimes that's a very common situation in a corporate setting where it's a communication issue where somebody might be feeling a bunch of things. But I say, well, have you had a conversation with the person? No, I don't want to say anything. Like
Yeah.
you'll hear that a lot. Or a manager will be complaining about an employee for all different things that really it's like the way the manager's showing up that could be causing the employee to feel very intimidated. So there's like the whole dynamic going on. The manager will be complaining about it. Basically, what do I have to do to fix my employee? And I'm like, well, maybe the employee is not the problem. Maybe you're the problem, right? Let's start there. Like, how are you showing up? What are you saying? What's your tone? Like that kind of thing. So there's so many scenarios, but I would say the most common is stress, work-life balance, that kind of thing, slash harmony. I call it harmony. I always say it's like an orchestra playing. Sometimes you can hear the percussion really loud, and other times you hear the flutes, other times you hear the clarinets or whatever. But like that's life. That's life. Sometimes it's a big percussion, loud, thundering, and then other times it's quiet and it's the same symphony. It's like your life.
Yeah.
So
And you need to
yeah,
kind of like tune into the other parts, right? They're all
yes,
there. And
they're
can
there.
we manage this one by turning the volume on this one and get back into harmony? I love that. That's a beautiful analogy.
Exactly.
And I love how, like, for OTs who are listening to this and thinking, oh, wow, like in order to get into executive coaching, I must need to know a lot about corporations and businesses and
Yeah,
structures and like management and things like that. And while it's helpful to have an idea of context, you're helping people with things that we know how to help people with. Hey,
totally.
like what are you doing for
Absolutely.
fun? How are you managing your stress? Wow, you're taking work
Exactly.
all the time. Let's put some boundaries on that. Let's figure out how to talk to your wife. Like, amazing.
Exactly. 100%. There are plenty of standard executive coaches out there
Yeah.
that will coach around leadership and scaling your business and numbers and data and blah, 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 blah. All the stuff that bores me to tears. Okay. I am like, if you want a executive coach, I'm not your person. Okay, but if you want, I always say personal coaching for professional people. If you want a personal approach to your department, your culture, like literally how people talk to each other. Let's just talk about that. Just
Yeah.
that alone
Yes.
is a year-long program of, okay, let's transform the way your employees talk to each other, the tone of voice in which they speak, how they assert themselves, where they set boundaries, how they keep their word around their agreements, organize their time so they get their work done in time.
Yeah.
Because if one person's work isn't getting done in, it affects the other person's work.
Yeah.
And that's what you see a lot. Like somebody's like, oh, I need this report by 9 a.m. Monday morning. And that person didn't get it done because they can't manage themselves. They can't structure their own life to keep their deadline. That's a corporate coaching situation, which
Yeah.
is totally OT. That's all OT. It's all OT.
I love it. So there's a difference between executive coaching and corporate
I'm not sure. I think the words are often used interchangeably, but I can tell you just from I'm not huge on LinkedIn. I probably should be more on LinkedIn, but I'm there just going whatever. But when I see LinkedIn, a lot of folks on LinkedIn will call themselves an executive coach. It's a buzzword. And usually the quote unquote executive coaching, it's still personal coaching because I brought in to do that too. But a lot of time with executive coaching, they're really paying you for bigger problems. Like they're paying you for system wide things that are bigger issues.
right?
And maybe there are OTs that do that high level. I could. I just don't love that part. I'd rather work with just the people on the front line doing the thing that they got to do.
That comes naturally to you as the
Yeah.
way you think as an OT, an individual in the context of their environment, in their roles, in their occupations. We
Yeah.
can never take our OT hat off. It's just how we see people. It's how we see
Yes.
situations, and we know how to fix those. Yeah.
Exactly.
So you have a mission.
I do have a mission.
Yeah.
I want to bring occupational therapy into the world, not just the medical world, not just the world of school systems,
Mhm.
NICUs, working with babies in hospitals, right? And even, I will assert, there's still a movement of a lot of OTs working in community settings, okay? Whatever that community setting is, but very often the setting, at least my experience, the setting, even in community, there's always quote unquote something wrong. It's like there's a homeless situation or drug abuse or whatever, and they're getting paid on a grant or from a nonprofit or from some system that doesn't have any money. Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But my mission is to bring OT into the world of corporate.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why I say that is because corporations have money.
Yeah.
Like corporations have millions of dollars and millions of dollars of budgets where they could pay an OT like a six-figure salary with benefits to be on staff at their place. That's the vision that I have. In this moment, I am an entrepreneur. And the
Yeah.
reason I'm an entrepreneur and I am basically a 1099 employee, contract employee for different corporations in the US. That's not everybody's comfort level.
No.
Most people, I would assert most OTs do not want to walk away from a six-figure job or benefits, 401k, healthcare, blah, blah, blah. They don't want to walk away from that
Yeah.
because it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. Let's call it a spade, okay? It took
Yes.
me years to walk away from my comfy, cozy job where I had a paycheck every single week. It's safety. It's a safety net.
For sure.
We all want security. It's
Yeah.
terrifying to walk away from that. And then there's a whole bunch of OTs that are just burned out of regular healthcare,
Yeah.
burned out of the school system. They don't want to do it anymore, but they don't know what else to do. And they have college debt and families to support and mortgages, all this. And in this moment, there's some opportunities for non-clinical, but there's not a whole lot. But what I want to do is carve a new path, blaze a new trail of like, okay, if I'm doing this, other people can do it. If I'm doing this, any other OT that's got any experience in mental health, even ergonomics, anything that interests them, right? That they can sort of create their own packaging and go in and get an actual job with an actual corporation where they're on staff. That's my vision. That's my mission. So it's a big dream. It's a big audacious, what do they call it? Big audacious,
hairy, audacious.
very audacious goal.
Ahead.
That's the goal. That's
Yeah.
my
That
yes.
is awesome. So what are you doing currently to move in the direction of that goal?
So in that direction, again, I have the OT coaches group where again, it's like this army of OTs that are interested in coaching that we're rallying folks from around the world. I just started the OT
We'll
coach.
link that in the show notes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
There's the OT coaches podcast, which is a teeny little baby at this point, but it's growing. And again, really just continuing to interview HR directors, interview managers. Again, there's the folks that I see, and then there's who's the potential to be seen. And I think just like in any other job, there's like there's the job description of what it would look like if you actually had an OT on staff here. But that's where it gets a little tricky. As you know, these we all have different talents.
Yeah.
It would be really hard to create a one size fits all
Yeah.
in a corporate setting because I can tell you the bigger dream there's a set of skills that I don't even have. Okay. And that's the whole ergonomic piece, right? Like I do coaching, and inside the hat of coaching, I'm very skilled at obviously coaching, but also mental health, like emotional health, like wellness, prevention. That's the stuff that I love. I love talking about that stuff. I love training people on that, like teaching, coaching, all the sleep, wellness, self care, exercise, like stress management. That's the stuff that lights me up. But there might be other OTs that they get all lit up by ergonomics and they could create a position for themselves just around ergonomics.
Absolutely.
Right. But ultimately, I envision a job description essentially for occupational therapy into corporate settings. And really, if it's done in a handful of organizations, I think it can be done anywhere because once it takes off,
Yeah.
it'll be unstoppable. It'll be unstoppable. And I want to say one more thing because OTs by nature, we're pioneers. We're pioneers, right? OT always is there when there's this worldwide community need that needs to be met, right? World War I, OTs were on the scene. That's when we first came on the scene, right?
Yeah.
World War II, OTs are on the scene. The polio epidemic, suddenly like kids are getting polio. They need OTs in school systems. OTs are on the scene, right?
Yep.
So every time there's a world, whatever, catastrophe, global war, just think about this for a second. We just came off of the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Massive global pandemic. There's something called the Great Resignation. Everybody's leaving their jobs. Why? They're
Yes.
stressed. They're
Yes.
like, they don't want to do it anymore. Their values are shifting. They don't want to be in their crappy 9 to 5, 40, 50, 60-hour week jobs anymore. They're done.
We are over it.
We're over it.
Yes.
Guess who is the most well-equipped, well-trained, well-educated, and well-positioned profession on the planet to handle that? Occupational therapy.
We are.
Like, this is our time. This is our time. So, yes,
Oh.
I get all excited and passionate about it.
I'm
'cause
getting goosebumps. I love it. These are things I'm passionate about too. And your passion shines through.
Thank you.
It truly is your mission, personal, professional mission. And in there, I was hearing some really neat things about coming off the pandemic. And I'm actually reminded of a call. So you hosted some OT from your OT coaches book group. I've attended a couple like Zoom meetings where
Meet
it's
and
sort of,
greets, yeah. Yeah.
Are you still doing those?
Yes.
Okay,
I was
awesome.
originally I used to do it on Friday nights, and then that got a little bit crazy because not everybody could do it Friday night. Then I switched to a different day. So it was just trying to pin down the time. Yes, it's going to be a monthly meet and greet again.
So
So
I volunteered on one of those calls to receive some coaching, and it was so helpful. And you encouraged me, I don't know if you remember, but you
I do
encouraged me
remember.
to exercise my play muscle again. And as through the pandemic, I got out of habit of all of the playful things I used to do. And really, like the problem I was coming to you with is I have no fun anymore. I felt heavy and I was feeling heavy, like wanted more levity in my life. And
Yeah.
enjoyment and just more that spontaneous, playful spirit. And you really pinned down through a few very efficient questions what was needed. And I went back to pottery
Thank you so
and I
much.
haven't stopped ever since. And I think that was probably like more than 9, 10 months ago,
Yeah.
maybe a year. Yeah.
So cool. I'm so
Thank you.
grateful it helped. Thank you so much for that. It's
Yeah.
just I love the follow-up because sometimes when you have just a sort of a drive-by coaching session with somebody,
Yeah.
right? You don't know how it ends ultimately. And so this is exciting. That one conversation just and that's the power of coaching.
Yes.
Was one conversation
One
and
conversation.
boom, it completely shifted something in you. And
It
now
did.
it opened up a whole new door of possibilities
Yep.
in one conversation.
One conversation. And it was
And that's
and
how it works.
it's so much like we find in OT, right? That we're often undervalue our offering because it's so common sense. Like, it's not like I didn't know pottery was the answer. I needed somebody to tell me, "Carlin, this is the answer to your problems. You need to go do it. Go do it. This is we can talk all about all the things you're feeling, and this is the answer." And I needed you to tell me the thing that I knew in my heart. And I think it's so beautiful and so valuable because honestly, like I'd been going to pottery for a million years and it just got out of the habit. And it was just,
Right.
I needed to just start flexing that muscle again and make it happen. And you told me the thing I needed, that I knew I needed to hear. And it was perfect.
The funny thing is I don't remember the exact conversation. It's probably recorded somewhere and posted in the group. But what I probably asked you was some version of what do you think would make a difference? And
Yeah,
you were the one that came up with
totally.
pottery.
Totally.
I didn't even say pottery because that
You
wouldn't
did.
have even been in my head. But
Yep.
I'm like, "What do you think it would take?" And you're like, "Pottery." I'm like, "There you go." Right? So that's part of the fun thing about coaching. And that's the difference again between a lot of times the mindset of coaching
Yeah.
is the belief is always that your client has the answer.
Yep.
They always have the answer, always. It's just a matter of how you're phrasing the question, how you're hearing the person, what you're picking up on, right? But the premise is again, people are resourceful, they're complete, they're whole, intelligent, beautiful human being, and all we're doing is just pulling the answer out of them.
You are not,
You
when
figure
you're
that
the
out.
coach, you're not the expert.
Correct.
You're
Never the
there
expert.
as they're the
Yes.
expert. Yeah.
Yes.
I love
So
it.
I
Do
love it.
do you find I've had a lot of conversations with OT assistants who are extra burnt out and
Mm,
really feeling underpaid and that their job options are so limited, the productivity standards are so high, and they could charge just as much as you as or I for coaching if they learn to coach
yeah.
and do that. And I feel like that's a niche that has high value because it will have high impact that
Yes.
often OTs will coach and in the end earn maybe the same or a little more than before, depending how much coaching we can do. But for an OTA, it's a giant leap
It's
financially.
significant. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
significant.
What would you
Yeah.
say to the OTAs or the codas out the world who don't even realize that they could go and coach and make a big difference?
It's a really great question. And again, I'm always a fan of getting some training for coaching. Okay. And this is where, again, you and I like have that. So I don't think you need to be certified when you're starting out.
Yeah.
I want to
Yep.
make that clear for the record. You don't need to be certified to get when you're starting out, but absolutely positively, you have to have some sort of training in basic coaching skills.
Yep.
Because again, if you're going to say that you're a coach, it really is a different skill set
Yep.
than going into a situation where you're quote unquote doing therapy.
Yep.
And the biggest distinction is as therapists, we are trained by pretty much definition under the medical model to take people from dysfunction to function, right?
Yep.
That's what we do. And you think about an OT and an OTA relationship where the OT goes in, evaluates the situation, creates the treatment plan. Here's what you have to do. These are the interventions. Then the OTA goes in and follows that treatment plan, right?
Yep.
That is a medical model
Yep.
treatment plan. But if you're going in as a coach, you're taking people from functional and bringing them to optimal.
Yeah.
There is no medical diagnosis. There is no quote unquote something wrong, something broken, something to fix. There is no intervention that you're treating or teaching somebody. You're really just bringing out the answers in another person, taking them from functional to optimal, right? So, from an OTA standpoint, again, I would say if you are an OTA listening to this, think of all of the occupations that you really enjoy treating, talking about, teaching, guiding, encouraging, right? Think about all those occupations. And there's, at least in the United States, under our framework, 47 of them.
Yeah.
Okay. And I
Yeah.
always pitch this because there's literally like 47 occupations. And the American system, the model that we have for insurance, you have to have medical necessity. I don't know if this is the same in Canada or
Mm.
any other area of the world, but in the United States, in order for your services as an OT to be covered, you have to have medical necessity. That
Mm.
is a massive burden.
That
It's a
is.
massive burden. There's like stroke patients and spinal cord patients that will get services denied because according to insurance, they don't have medical necessity. And I'm like, really? Like my eyebrows are raised. Seriously, somebody just had a stroke and you don't see medical necessity?
And
So,
that's infuriating because
oh, it's
our scope of
infuriating.
practice doesn't say that's the way it is. It's an
Exactly.
it's a payer deciding that.
100. It's a
Yes.
payer situation. It's a
Yeah.
third party reimbursement thing.
Yeah.
But the original question, again, the original thing is if you're an OTA and you've got all these things that you want to coach around,
Yeah.
the nice and beautiful thing is as a coach, you don't need medical necessity because
Yeah.
there is no medical necessity. You're
Yes.
working from functional to optimal. And even even if there is something wrong, let's say somebody did have cancer and now they're recovering from their cancer, or they had a stroke and they're recovering from their stroke. If you're going in from a coaching standpoint, using a coaching approach, and you're trained and you know how to ask questions and you know how to facilitate that, you don't need an OT to go
Yeah.
in there first. You can go right in and start working because if you're working from coaching standpoint, it's a separate thing from therapy.
Yeah.
It's very separate. Yeah.
Yeah. Really cool. I
Yeah.
love
And
it.
again, there's so many, oh my God, there's so many occupations. There's again, work and sleep and stress and drive. Oh my God, there's so many. It's endless.
What are your maybe if you could give two options. Favorite kind of starter coaching training? Like for someone who's okay, I just want to like peel back a little bit and take some basic stuff. And then if you were to have your ideal wish list, like what's the best coaching certification to take? What would you
Okay, awesome. Great question. Okay. I'm going to give a shout out to Helene Terrial from Canada.
Okay.
She has a program called Dive into a Coach Approach. And I highly encourage if you are brand new and you just want to get some training under your belt, take her Dive into a Coach Approach level 1.
Okay.
It's roughly $397. Don't quote me on that, but it's
Okay.
somewhere around that amount, which is way better than $10,000, which is what most coaching programs are.
Yeah.
It's a great first level and it is accredited by the AOTA for CEUs. And it's also accredited by the ICF for CCEs, which is continuing coach education. And the beautiful thing about that is that Helene's program is the beginning steps to becoming an ICF accredited certified coach. Okay. So what that means is her program is like when you're done with it, you at least the first level, you
Yeah.
have whatever 12 hours or whatever it is. And then she has 3 levels of training. But if you start with her program,
Yeah.
it will be the beginning pathway to become an ICF accredited coach. So if you at some point down the road want to become an ICF accredited coach, you now have like basically a starter kit.
That's
And I'm not paid to say that. I have no formal, like, I think I just have so much respect for her. And we are in a sort of a mutual fan club. Like, I'm so appreciative of her program because she did what I've been wanting to do for a year.
yeah.
And you know how life gets busy. You're juggling different projects and whatever. I'm like, you know what? I have a theory. I'd rather not reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
If somebody already created an amazing program, oh my God, I would way rather be underneath that program and promote it. Again, another OT, another coach, absolutely amazing.
Do you know, to interject a little observation here, if I might, many people who have a scarcity mindset would be like, damn it, I was going to do that. I should have got off my butt. Oh, she went and did it. That sucks. I don't even want to look at it. That's terrible. And you, on the other hand, are like, your mission is bigger than you. Your mission is
Way
to get
bigger.
OTs out there. You can't do that by yourself. You
No,
want more people to be doing it. You're like,
absolutely.
great, let's cheer you on. I'll
Yes,
take another
exactly.
angle.
Exactly. And you, like, again, with your Activate Vitality workbook, I'm like, oh my God, everybody should buy her workbook, right? I don't have an affiliate link. Not like, I'm just like, go buy Carlin's workbook. That's great. She did what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Colleen did what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Oh, and I have another shout out. This is so cool. I don't know this person at all.
Yeah.
Okay. But this is so exciting. There is, again, another thing on my bucket list that I didn't get to do yet, but maybe one day. I've always wanted to do a TED talk
Yeah, me too.
on occupational
That's my
therapy.
big, hairy, audacious.
Right?
Yeah,
Same.
totally.
Another, it's like past the corporate stuff. But get this. As of this morning, I was scrolling, like where I was scrolling, YouTube or something. And that's one of my subscribed things is a TED Talks.
Yeah.
Wait for it. There's an OT that did a TED Talk on the value of occupational therapy.
I love it. Yes.
Her name is
So-
Jill Miller. Again, I don't know her. I've never met her. She has a British accent. I think she's British, Australian. I don't
So
know.
good.
Forgive me.
Yes.
But I was like, my heart was exploding. I was like, oh my God, there's an OT on the red carpet on a TED Talk talking about the value of occupational therapy. Give it up.
And it's a beautiful, she's got short, dark hair, right?
Yes.
I've seen it. Yes, I love it. So good. I'll have to link that too. It's so good.
Yes. So cool. So yes, it's way bigger than me. I feel like I'm creating a movement rather than, I'm not an authority on coaching and OT. I'm no authority, but I got a big
Kinda
mouth.
are.
No, definitely not an authority. I'm a big mouth. I have a big mouth and I want to make my big mouth and loud voice for good in the world.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have the personality also of being like a connector. I love to bring people together. I love to bring ideas together. That's good fun for me. So I'm like, okay, I got the podcast. I certainly have no authority. I know a few things, but ultimately I want to do what you're doing. I want to interview other OTs, right? I want to bring on people that know more than me, that are smarter than me and have
Elevate
more,
each other. It makes us all better. Yes.
it's just better.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really cool, unique thing about OT is that there aren't enough of us to go around.
Yeah.
And so there's no room for scarcity. Let's just bang each other's drum and highlight each
Yes.
other, and
love
it
that.
elevates all of us. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I've said that for years.
Yeah.
If one of us rises, we all rise.
Yeah.
Like the fact that there's one OT out there that's on a TED Talk stage, that's something that the whole planet can celebrate, that other OTs are like cheering. You've got an amazing planner book that's selling on Amazon. Carlin, right? Oh my God, look what Carlin did. She created this thing. Right? This is funny. I was at my local library like last week. Sometimes I go there just to get out of the house, right? Because I work out of the house. I was there, I set up my laptop. I'm like working on my thing. I get up to just stretch my legs and just walk around. And I happen to be in the section of the library that has all the dementia books, right?
Okay.
And I look, my dad has dementia. So I'm like perusing. I just look at it and I'm perusing the book titles.
Yeah.
What jumps right out at me? I don't know the title of the book, but a woman that was an occupational therapist wrote and published a book. It's right there with all the other dementia books. And I was like, yeah, I got goosebumps. Like, I got goosebumps. I was like, yeah, we published a book. Yeah, we published a book. And then I was watching Shark Tank one night, watching Shark Tank, and there was an OT on the Shark Tank show. I was like, we're on Shark Tank. We're on Shark Tank. And that's like how I genuinely feel like that. If one of us does something cool, that's like a shout out to the entire profession.
Yes. You are the epitome of abundance. Like that is just so it, right? That's thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you. This is awesome.
So I have 3 questions that I've been trying to remember to ask everybody at the end of the interviews. What does being brave mean to you?
Oh, being brave. Being brave is, I could think of this in a couple of contexts. Just being brave is being your most authentic self, bringing your most real selves, your most real, raw, just you selves, your personality, right? So just this, right? Just showing up and not having notes, not having preparation, trusting the process, trusting you, just showing up, right? Being brave in that context. And then I could think of being brave as jumping in and doing something even though you're scared, even though you're a little scared, a little nervous, not quite sure how it's going to go, but you're going to trust the process, trust yourself, trust the universe, trust God, trust your inner guidance, that you're just going to trust and you're going to take that first step into the unknown. Even sometimes if it doesn't make any sense at all,
Mhm.
that you're going to just trust the process. To me, that's being brave.
That really aligns with my mission as well, is that I really want people to untangle the natural fear that comes up when we're stretching with that sense that I shouldn't do it, that you're about to stretch, you're about to grow, you're doing something. And of course you're nervous. Of course you're uncertain. Of course you're fearful. Or your nervous system is telling you you're going to die because that's what our
Yes.
nervous systems do, right?
Yes.
But that's not a sign that you should stop. That's like, oh, hey, like growth, I'm on my way. Got it. You're going to come up every time I do this, huh? Okay.
Yes.
Here we go.
That's exactly it. I think you just nailed it right there. Like when people tell me that they're scared or they're terrified or they're not sure, I'm like, oh my God, that's great. Let's clap and celebrate that. That is an absolute sign that you're on the right path.
Because if it didn't matter to you, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. If you're confronted with fear, awesome.
Yeah.
As what's her name? Jen Sincero wrote the book, You Are a Badass.
Yes.
She has a line in there, give fear a suck it sandwich. I cracked up when I read that line. I was like, that's it. Just give it a suck it sandwich. Just say, thank you for sharing. You can go away now. I've got this.
That's
Yes,
hilarious.
that's brave.
That is brave. That totally is. What's something brave you've done recently?
Oh my, this podcast.
Mhm.
This podcast right now, not knowing the questions you were going to ask, not having any idea of the direction it was going to go, and just being like, you know what, Jill, this is not a test I have to study for.
No.
And that's my first thought a lot of times. Ah, what questions are you going to ask? I have to prepare. I have
Yeah.
to sound like an expert. I
Right.
got to sound like I know what I'm doing. No,
Um, that's
no,
not
I'm
the
serious. I'm
style of
just
this podcast.
figuring it out.
Yeah.
Like, I might be a little bit farther down the line, maybe a smidge, but I am so just figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
As our mutual friend Trish Williams will say, it's about throwing spaghetti against the wall, right? There's systems. Some systems I do have in place. I
Yeah.
genuinely have some system, but in other systems, I'm throwing spaghetti
Right. We figure it out. Throw a little
and I'm figuring
spaghetti.
it out, and
Yep.
it's a
Can
yep.
line up some of those noodles eventually. They don't have to be
Yes.
all right away. Yeah. What would you like to see OTs get a little bit more brave about in the coming years?
Oh, I have goosebumps that you're asking that question. Getting into corporate,
Yeah.
owning owning our power, owning our training, owning all of the areas that we can make a difference in, not just the ones that insurance companies will cover.
Mm.
That is my reason for living. That is my mission in life. When I graduated OT school 30 years ago, I graduated, and at the time, the only choices were working under a medical model, either physical or mental, working in a school system. That was it. We had three choices. Three. I would love to create a fourth choice. I would love to create, hey, I want to be an OT and I want to work for Prudential. I want to work for Amazon. I want to work for Google. I want to be the OT on staff for, I don't know, Wells Fargo Bank on a global level. And I'm going to be the one that works with all the OCD people at the top level. Every single mental health condition and even physical. Let me just rattle off a few statistics that are just startling, like
Sure.
really startling. And again, this is just United States, but I would assert it's probably any westernized country.
Yeah.
Statistically, and I want to say this is even before the pandemic. Okay, this
Okay.
is National Institutes of Health. 26% of adults, which we'll say working adults, okay,
Yeah.
working adults, 26% of working adults have some sort of mental health diagnosis.
Wow.
26%.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot of people. Okay.
Mm.
26% are dealing with depression, anxiety, addictions, OCD, whatever, like fill in the blank. Okay. 48% of working adults have some kind of chronic health condition. That's just at least one chronic health condition. It could be obesity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, recovery from cancer. And then something like 6 to 8%, 4 to 8%, somewhere in that area has diagnosed or slash undiagnosed ADHD or executive function disorder. This is like across the board. This is millions of, and I always say, and I say this with total respect, but if you are an OT working in the school system and you're working with those kids with the bad handwriting, or you're working with the kids that can't sit still in their chair, okay? All those kids, and you're working with the kids in the resource room because they need extra help. They need tutoring. They need extra help, right? If you are an OT and you're working with those kids, all those kids grow up and they all get jobs in corporate settings. They all get jobs. And you know this, most of ADHD people are really freaking smart. They're the ones that become doctors, lawyers, business owners, entrepreneurs. Those are all those people, all the kids that couldn't sit still in school and they had their little fidget and they needed help with handwriting. Okay. They all grow up and they got jobs and they're
Yeah.
in their 20s and 30s and 50s and they're trying to juggle families and they're trying to juggle work. They're doing all the stuff and they're working for their corporations and they got their jobs. All of those people, if they were little kids once, they all grew up and they're all now in the they're now in the workforce. They all need,
Well,
not all.
and I think it's interesting when you think about that because they tend to be they only get to see OT if they're not functioning well with those conditions. And where you're coming in is saying, let's take you instead of from dysfunctional to functional, we can take you to functional to optimal. And I would say most professionals I know, like me with ADHD, it's supporting that optimization, right? Like
Definitely.
a business, it's not like I'm dysfunctional, but with the go and get stuff, that's what catches me up. Is
Absolutely. And myself too. I don't know if I've never been assessed for ADHD, but I always, and I say this very candidly, I've never, like the official, I think you had to have symptoms in childhood or something. So I
like
don't
smart
remember.
people usually masked, especially
Yes.
girls, right?
Exactly, the
Yeah.
girls, exactly, right? So it's very possible I had symptoms in childhood, I don't remember, but I can very vividly tell you an absolute for me, when I was in my early 30s, I used to be very into bicycle riding.
Yeah.
And this one day, I was riding a race, it was like a distance race, it was like 100 something miles for charity, right?
Yeah.
And on that race, I got into a bicycling accident with about 10 other people. We all got in a heap, we all fell over. I was wearing a helmet. I hit the concrete so hard, bruised my ribs, road rash. I was in the emergency room. I had a full on concussion.
Wow.
A full on concussion. I had a CAT scan. I was sick for a week. I felt like I had the flu.
Yeah.
Okay. And I can honest to God tell you, I have never been the same since. I've never been able to multitask the way I was able to multitask and juggle things. I was never as fast again. Like I used to be things like Speedy Gonzalez. Like everything was fast, 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 fast. Ever since that cycling accident, I'm fully functional. I can
Yeah.
drive, I can work, I can pay my mortgage, I can do grocery shopping, I can host Thanksgiving dinner for 20 people. I can do all the things. Okay. But there is something after that incident that changed for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, wait, now I gotta think about stuff and
Yeah.
I gotta plan and I gotta map things out differently. And that was one moment in time, one bicycling accident, one concussion that happened like 20 years ago, but I was never the same. But I thought to myself, if that one little incident impacted me, think about all the other things. And you know this, executive function, this is like, they've done studies on this. Executive function is impacted by stress.
Totally.
You don't have to have ADHD. You don't have to have a bicycling accident and a concussion.
Yeah.
Just stress. Mom, what do they call it? Mom brain when you first have a new baby, right? Like that brain fog, the COVID fog. People like survive COVID, but they're like, oh my God, how do I organize myself now?
Totally. And trauma, right?
That's
We're not meant to sustain extended periods of stress.
Yes, we're not designed for that.
We are
Our
not.
soul was not meant to carry that burden. And then we're doing it.
No.
And we're exhausted and we're
Yeah.
stressed. And that's where OT can come in. Whether you're working with a stressed out college kid and you're the OT on the campus and they've hired you as a full-time job with a salary and benefits and that's your job. Oh my God, what an amazing opportunity for new grad OTs. That this generation, that they get more than 3 choices. They don't have to only work in hospitals, schools, and psychiatry hospitals where their productivity is constantly managed and they're stressed out, bringing home paperwork, that we actually get jobs on college campuses or corporations, or that's my dream. That's what I see for the future.
So much opportunity.
Yes, endless.
Thank you,
So
Jill. This has been
thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. And let me just give you a shout out for everything that you're doing. You're amazing. And I'm so glad our paths crossed and we've become friends, right?
too.
There's no competition. It's total collaboration and love and lifting each other up. It's just so cool.
Absolutely. And talking about our differences and talking
Yes.
about our similarities and our shared passions. And we met through Facebook groups, right? Like it's a funny new world for a couple of ladies who are a little further along in our
Yeah.
in our life.
Beautiful years of the post 50s. Being fabulous.
If people want to reach you, I know joining the OT Coaches Facebook group, listening to
Yes.
your OT Coaches podcast, I'll share where's the easiest place if people want to send you a message or chat with you.
Just going to the website and
Okay.
clicking contact us.
Okay.
That's the fastest website. Click contact us. There's a little form you fill out that goes right to my email.
Okay.
I can reply and then we can have a conversation. Yeah. I offer like little 15-minute free consultations if people want to just jump on a discovery call, 15 minutes, just to see if you're interested in coaching,
Yeah.
if you're interested in pursuing coaching. And I always say anybody that's interested in coaching, if you're interested in becoming an OT coach, it's always a good idea to hire a coach first, just so you
Coach.
understand what it is and experience it.
Yeah.
And yeah, jump in the conversation. It's a great time to be an OT. It's a great time to be a coach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Brave OT podcast. If you found this episode inspiring, please subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share it with a couple of your OT friends. To learn more about Jill Garaffa and her coaching services, visit Seeds of Change Coaching. And for more about how to work with me so that you can thrive without the hustle, visit balanceworks.online. As always, be brave, OTs.